This poem is called Young Donald, and it is actually an 8th century Gaelic ballad. And so originally it was sung. And this ballad has no known author. It's like a traditional ballad. And in the early part of the 20th century, it was translated by Lady Augusta Gregory. So this is her translation that I'm reading. Young Donald. It is late last night, the dog was speaking of you, the snipe was speaking of you in her deep marsh. It is you are the lonely bird through the woods, and that you may be without a mate until you find me. You promised me, and you said a lie to me, that you would be before me where the sheep are flocked. I gave a whistle and 300 cries to you, and I found nothing there but a bleating lamb. You promised me a thing that was hard for you, a ship of gold under a silver mast, 12 towns with a market in all of them, and a fine white port by the side of the sea. You promised me a thing that is not possible, that you would give me gloves of the skin of a fish, that you would give me shoes of the skin of a bird, and a suit of the dearest silk in Ireland. When I go by myself to the well of loneliness, I sit down and I go through my trouble. When I see the world and do not see my boy, he that has an amber shade in his hair. It was on that Sunday I gave my love to you, the Sunday that is the last before Easter Sunday, and myself on my knees reading the Passion and my 2 eyes giving love to you forever. My mother has said to me not to be talking with you today or tomorrow or on the Sunday. It was a bad time she took for telling me that. It was shutting the door after the house was robbed. My heart is as black as the blackness of the sloe, or as the black coal that is on the smith's forge, or as the sole of a shoe left in white halls. It was you put that darkness over my life. You have taken the east from me. You have taken the west from me. You have taken what is before me and what is behind me. You have taken the moon. You have taken the sun from me. And my fear is great that you have taken God from me. You gotta wonder what happened, you know? Ancestors. One rages white as wood. Another sits ruined in the center of her realm. One of them broods over a clutch of old combs. One darkens like an oyster in the autumn smoke. There's one the shape of a ganglion and one like a yawl. There's one climbing up from the deep planks. You find a glass one, a leather one, a salt one. You watch one dissolve into the embrace of an oak. Already there's one drawing a fine grid on your forehead. There's one disjoining the cables of your wrist. One lives in horses, another in a warp of snow. One's a kind of luster in the mouth. You remember one who taught you to make a kerchief of your hands. Another came in a nightdress brown with spit. Sometimes you glimpse one moving through the woods or whispering through the slits of an iron rake. There's one who waits and one who weeps on the road, but you choose the one who blooms like a war by night, the one pulling another sheaf of your hair into her mouth. That one is always here. That one, that tender trench knife in the head. A sister is a thought curving back on herself. I watch her small and stepping through dark doors. She wears a skirt stitched from sparrow's ribs and speaks a language dug from the hum of coal tar. Somehow, she's grown arms like engines, spinning earth and oxygen from the rain wet. Her mouth, which once resembled mine, now buckles like the beak of a record player over the blade of her face. She hears not ginger or Beijinger, though I have transmitted these to her in dozens of pink nacelles. She moves in a wish world, pressing her glass cleats down into the mulch, blistering the daisies in their beds. When I wake up in the small breastbone of night, thinking of her name, the white, terrific clock of it, I think of cities made narrow by fire. I think of peacocks moving their slow tongues of ash. A sister is a thought, curving back on herself. This bruise dazzles. I conceptualized and or drafted many of the poems in this book, several of the poems in this book, during two trips to China that I took, one in 2009 and one in 2010. On the 2010 trip, visited a special village. It was a village in which the people were mostly farmers. But in their off time, what everybody would do is they would go to the village church and they would all sing in a choir. And we got to hear the choir perform when we were there in China. And they performed Ode to Joy, and they performed a lot of other pieces of music in beautiful harmony. And afterwards, there was this time of like Q&A and cultural exchange when we said to the singers, like, you can ask us anything that you want, any question you might have, and we thought they would ask us something about America or whatever, and they did, but what they asked us to do is they said, tell us about your choirs, which was kind of amazing to think that maybe somewhere there are people who think of this country as a giant, huge choir. That would be great. So anyway, after I visited those singers, I wrote this poem for them. At the Tea House. I can't understand anything with this mud and the pieces of silk and peacocks singing. Here's a whole farm painted orange on a Thursday, and here's a tricycle at the brink of a scream. I have things, like the Sugar Jones I can't help bringing to every lunch. This village is rad and huge as smoke. Look at my flat gold feet chattering over mucky stacks of tiles. No one yells at me in the light. Once upon a time, I had enough anger in me to crack my enormous nightdress with my lungs full of burning chrysanthemums. Now just imagine the color of the sky in my brain case. I'm drinking tea with diamonds in it. My blood cells race like star-clawed kites over every knuckle of the roof of this pavilion. Everyone I've loved is balanced on the edge of my chopstick. I lean back to yell for the sun, the sun, the sun, the sun, the sun, and a small cup of tea arrives whose Chinese name is Pieces of Shreddedness. Dear Mother, yesterday, love was a rockery of accumulated refinement, and today it's a donkey named Goodbar dipping out from a doorway. I can't simmer down, and I won't simmer down. Some people make a life of straw. Some people get holy on not much at all. This next poem I actually composed not in China, but rather at a faculty meeting. The topic of which was how to deal with disruptive students in the classroom. So we were given a series of protocols, none of which were very practical in the case of actual disturbance. I wrote this poem called Advisory Protocol. Remember that it is not your responsibility to account for the severely troubled. You need only swallow enough needles and enough bread. The first disruption will resemble a silver collapse of the inner ear. Then it enters the room. In such cases, you must hold yourself in a state of tonic immobility, letting your remaining teeth fall to the carpet. If you find yourself shrinking to the thinness of a soap leaf, if you perceive your tongue halting its progress across the window pane, you may have entered a rare or acute oscillation. Try to exit firmly and with respect. In this, mark your training. Mark that each of your hands is a perianth of light. Where you wanted to go can't be reached by lip gloss anymore. Get up, you'll have to climb. I'll just read a couple more. And I'll read some that I usually don't actually read at readings. So, because it's going to be fun for me and for you. So I would find myself thinking about ancestors a lot in this book. Like you already heard my poem called "Ancestors," but it turns out I have a poem about a specific ancestor. My great grandmother, whose name was Alberta Elvira Smith, was her name, and there are a lot of ways in which she was an unhappy woman, and perhaps if she had lived in this century, she would have had a chance to be happier than she could be living at the time when she actually lived. Anyway, this poem is called Alberta. Say she was noble, a bright and foreign kind, her long gloved hands, her smell of coins and salt. She had a way of staring over the yokes of trees at you, slim in her woven skirt and church heels, all that light hair twisting through a comb like speech. Now say the railroad came and changed the whole county. Railroad came and slithered over the mountains to where you can't catch. Tobacco in the lungs, grease unfolding in the mouth, how year by year your father's voice grew narrower. Clifton, he called you, Butler, William, Henry. Back to the home place where God lay like a spine in the earth. But say you kissed her once, a taste of glass. Say she muttered over you, grandfather of smoke, grandfather of great sorrow. Tell us what you gave for all the stars drowned in her skin, for her womanish back of the neck tilting away. And I'll close with this poem, which I wrote after moving to Louisville, Kentucky, which is located in the Ohio River Valley, which you may or may not know makes it like the allergy capital of the United States. And no one told me that before I moved there. And I already suffered from seasonal allergies just living in Iowa for a while. And I thought it couldn't get any worse than that. But then I moved to Kentucky. And so I wrote this poem kind of expressing some ideas about that. This is called the Allergenesis. They come in their millions, breaking open in the muck. They come with their barnacle bodies blooming. In white, in sulfur colonies they come, rising from radial engines of dark, from millions of low hatcheries they come, unfolding their jaws, sequin by sequin. They come hot and star-limbed and buzzing with their wire bones, with their names turning edgewise in the mouth, bloodweed, chest vein, the names, knife clock, mule hook, the names. They come lifting themselves long as sentences in air, spiraling down the rifled barrel of the windpipe, riven and sweltering and swelling. They come into the body's sad lake, its blue bag of steam. So I, eater of pith, I, gum knuckles, I, threshing spoon, must move in wild across the tracheal field, must knock and drag to meet them where they camp, deep in the soft combs of the lungs. Even my breath turns black as I pursue my course, see their millions of insectile wings grown thick with theft. Come, let me clutch at them with my medicine claw and my blood helmet down in the fens of histamine.